Here is the text rewritten exactly as you requested. Number 12. Break a leg. Imagine a world where good wishes sound like a threat. We're all familiar with the phrase break a leg, a bizarre piece of theatrical superstition that we lob at actors before a performance. But stop for a second and think about what you're actually saying. You're telling someone to go out there and shatter a bone in their lower limb. This is the human equivalent of telling a soldier, I hope you have a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day on the battlefield. You can just picture a confused, aspiring thespian backstage at their first play, hearing this and wondering if the theater community is actually a secret society of bone-breaking sadists. It's a linguistic pretzel, a well-meaning curse. The irony, of course, is that the opposite, wishing someone good luck, was thought to be the real jinx. So to avoid the bad juju of saying good luck, we invented a phrase so spectacularly awful that it somehow looped all the way back around to being a good thing. Your brain has to perform some serious mental gymnastics to accept that a phrase synonymous with grievous bodily harm is, in fact, a warm hug. It's like telling your friend, I hope your car breaks down right before your job interview, and expecting them to smile and say thank you. You're essentially speaking in riddles, a human-to-human encryption where the key is a shared understanding of this one weird, outdated superstition. Number 11. Curiosity killed the cat. For centuries, this saying has been the go-to line for anyone who has an opinion about you having too many questions. Someone wonders out loud if we could build a car that runs on sheer rage and competitive spirit, and some well-meaning person inevitably trots out this ancient warning. First of all, the original phrase was actually, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. So for a while there, we were all walking around with a truncated, deeply pessimistic version of the original. We just lopped off the good part, the part that says, yeah, you might get into some trouble, but you'll learn something great from it. Now it's just a blanket statement to shut down any inquiry. Imagine you're a scientist trying to find a cure for some disease, and your lab partner says, hey, maybe we should stop poking around. You know what they say, curiosity killed the cat. So what? Are we supposed to just sit in the dark, never opening doors or looking under rocks? The saying makes it sound like an unquenchable thirst for knowledge is some kind of character flaw, a flaw that will lead to a feline death. You're literally being told that the very thing that makes us intelligent and capable of growth, our desire to understand things, is a bad idea. Your brain, the very thing designed to ask questions, is being told to pump the brakes. It's a verbal paradox, an anti-intellectual bumper sticker that makes absolutely zero sense if you think about it for more than 3 seconds. Number 10, the whole 9 yards. This one is just a fun fact wrapped in an absurd package. We use it all the time. I gave him the whole 9 yards. We decorated the whole 9 yards. It means everything, but where did it come from? There are approximately 1,400 different theories on this one, ranging from the length of a World War II ammunition belt to the amount of cloth in a Scottish kilt. And you know what the most likely answer is? Nobody has a clue. We're all just running around, casually using a phrase that we have zero understanding of. It's the linguistic equivalent of a cargo cult, where we mimic the behavior without understanding the purpose. You're telling your friend about some wild party you threw, and you say you went the whole 9 yards with the decorations, and both of you just accept that this means you went all out. But if they were to say, wait, why 9 yards? Why not 10 or 7? Is there some kind of standard for all out that I'm not aware of? You would have no good answer. The phrase has just reached critical mass where it has a universally accepted meaning that is completely disconnected from its origin. It's a word fossil, a remnant of a past conversation or event that has been worn so smooth by time that its original purpose is no longer recognizable. You're just mindlessly repeating something that sounds cool, and 100 years from now, people will probably be doing the same thing with yeet or riz. Here's the text rewritten exactly as requested. Number 9. Chew the fat. You're at a coffee shop, catching up with an old friend. The conversation is light, maybe a little gossipy, and your friend says, "So glad we got to chew the fat." You nod in agreement, your brain casually filing this phrase under things humans say that don't involve actual chewing. But think about it. Why are we using a metaphor for idle conversation that involves gnawing on a piece of animal lard? There's nothing appetizing about that image. It sounds like something a grizzled prospector would do after a long day of panning for gold, just sitting by the fire, struggling to get through a tough, unappetizing meal while complaining about the price of dynamite. This phrase reportedly comes from sailors and soldiers who had to eat tough, salted pork. The only way to get through it was to chew the fat, slowly and methodically, while passing the time with their fellow crewmates. So what you're actually saying is, I'm so glad we got to sit here and slowly gnaw on a disgusting piece of meat together. It's a completely unappealing image for a perfectly pleasant activity. We've turned a description of a difficult, almost gross necessity into a synonym for a friendly chat. You're essentially telling your friend, our conversation was so pleasant, it reminded me of having to eat some hard and unpalatable pork to survive. It's a linguistic prank we all play on ourselves, a weird little inside joke where the punchline is a piece of pork rind. Number 8. Take it with a grain of salt. This one is a classic. Someone tells you something a little too outlandish, maybe a story about their pet ferret inventing a new kind of perpetual motion machine, and you say, I'll take that with a grain of salt. And everyone nods, knowing you're expressing a healthy dose of skepticism. But why a grain of salt? Why not a pinch of sugar? Or a dash of pepper? The origin of this one is actually pretty metal. The Roman scholar Pliny the Elder, a guy who definitely knew a thing or two about bizarre human behavior, talked about an antidote to poison that had so many ingredients, you had to take it with a grain of salt to make it palatable. Over time, the phrase got twisted. It went from, this makes a bitter pill easier to swallow, to, this is something I'm not entirely sure I should believe. You're basically saying that the information being offered is so questionable that you need a tiny bit of seasoning to help it go down. But let's be real. A single grain of salt isn't going to help you swallow anything, especially not a story about a ferret-powered perpetual motion machine. Your brain, for a moment, has to ignore the literal meaning and just accept that this tiny, flavorless speck is the perfect metaphor for a healthy dose of doubt. It's a verbal placebo, a ritualistic act of skepticism that we all perform without thinking about the underlying absurdity of it. Number 7. Spill the beans. When you want someone to reveal a secret, you tell them to spill the beans. It's one of those phrases that just rolls off the tongue. But if you've ever stopped to visualize this, you're basically telling someone to knock over a container of legumes. And for what? So we can all stare at the scattered beans on the floor. This phrase is believed to have originated in ancient Greece, where they used beans to vote. White beans meant yes, black beans meant no. If someone spilled the beans before the vote was officially tallied, the results would be revealed prematurely. So when you tell your friend to spill the beans on their secret crush, you are essentially telling them to prematurely reveal the results of a secret Greek-style election that never happened. You're invoking an ancient democratic process to talk about who someone finds cute. Your brain has to ignore the actual image of spilling beans, which is usually just a mild mess and a reason to get out the broom, and instead jump directly to the abstract concept of revealing a secret. It's a very specific and very strange cultural reference that has been completely untethered from its historical context. We're all just asking each other to commit a metaphorical electoral fraud for the sake of some juicy gossip. Here is the text rewritten exactly as you requested. Number 6. Bite the bullet. You're facing a dreaded task. Maybe it's calling customer service or finally tackling that stack of laundry. Someone in a moment of misplaced empathy tells you to bite the bullet. And you get it. You know what they mean. You have to face something difficult with courage. But the image itself is so visceral and horrifying. You're being told to literally clamp down on a piece of metal with your teeth. This phrase comes from a time before modern anesthesia, when soldiers undergoing battlefield surgery were given a lead bullet to bite down on to help them endure the pain. So, when you're telling your friend to bite the bullet about a 5-minute call to the cable company, you're essentially saying, hey, I know this is a horrifying, painful experience on par with having a limb amputated while you're fully conscious. Good luck. We've taken one of the most extreme, terrifying medical procedures in history and turned it into a casual suggestion for dealing with minor inconveniences. Your brain has to make a spectacular leap, from the image of a soldier gritting their teeth through a torturous procedure to you reluctantly dialing a customer service number. It's a phrase that dramatically inflates the stakes of any situation, turning a minor annoyance into a matter of life and death, and we just use it without a second thought. Number 5. The bee's knees. If something is absolutely fantastic, you might say it's the bee's knees. But what exactly does that mean? Are we talking about a bee's actual knees? Do they have knees? Let's assume for a second that they do. Would they be particularly impressive? Probably not. They're just tiny insect knees. They're not exactly a marvel of the natural world. This phrase is a perfect example of a nonsensical saying from the 1920s, a time when people just made up weird animal-related phrases to describe things they liked. Other examples include the cat's pajamas, the snake's hips, and the monkey's eyebrows. They were all just funny, quirky ways of saying the best. There's no deeper meaning, no hidden historical context, just pure linguistic creativity. You're not complimenting a bee's anatomy. You're just using a fun, nonsensical sound to express your admiration. It's a throwback to a time when people weren't afraid to just make up ridiculous things and see if they stuck. The fact that the bee's knees is the one that survived is a testament to its memorable absurdity. Your brain just files this under a special category of language where literal meaning doesn't apply, and you just accept that some tiny insect joints are, for some reason, the ultimate expression of perfection. Number 4. Saved by the bell. You're in a tense meeting, about to be asked a question you don't know the answer to, and your phone rings. You breathe a sigh of relief and tell your coworker, "Saved by the bell." And everyone understands exactly what you mean. You were on the verge of disaster, but an interruption rescued you. The phrase is most commonly associated with boxing, where the bell signals the end of a round, saving a fighter from a beatdown. But the more bizarre origin story is from the Victorian era, when people were afraid of being buried alive. They would sometimes be buried with a string tied to their finger, which was connected to a bell above their grave. If they woke up in their coffin, they could ring the bell and be saved by the bell. So when you use this phrase to describe avoiding a difficult question at a work meeting, you're basically making a deeply morbid reference to a gruesome near-death experience. Your brain has to ignore the horrifying image of a person clawing their way out of a premature grave and instead just focus on the abstract concept of a last-minute rescue. You're not just expressing relief, you're making a ghoulish historical reference to the fear of being buried alive, which is a bit much for a Monday morning staff meeting. Here is the text rewritten exactly as requested. Number 3. Let the cat out of the bag. You're about to tell someone a secret, or maybe you've accidentally revealed one, and you say you've let the cat out of the bag. This phrase has a surprisingly simple but dark origin. It reportedly comes from a medieval market scam where dishonest vendors would sell a customer a sack supposedly containing a piglet. The customer, if they weren't careful, would take the sack home only to discover a cat inside instead of a pig. If someone let the cat out of the bag, the scam was revealed. So when you use this phrase to talk about telling your friend who's secretly dating who, you're not just revealing a secret. You are invoking a shady, medieval market fraud. You're essentially telling your friend, "I just exposed a deceptive transaction for the sale of a fake piglet." The fact that we use a phrase with such a specific and frankly kind of mean origin to describe something as mundane as gossip is just wild. Your brain has to ignore the specific imagery of a cat tumbling out of a burlap sack and jump straight to the abstract concept of a secret being revealed. It's a linguistic ghost, a relic of a time when the world was a little more rugged and scams were a bit more creative. Number 2, it's raining cats and dogs. This is one of the first idioms we learn as kids. A huge storm rolls in and someone says, "Wow, it's raining cats and dogs." And we all just accept this. But what a bizarre and disturbing image that is. It's a torrential downpour, and you're imagining house pets plummeting from the sky. It sounds like something out of a very strange, very sad children's book. There are a few theories about the origin of this one, but the most popular is also the most grim. In 17th century England, when houses had thatched roofs, stray animals would often sleep on them. During a heavy storm, the rain would wash them off the roof, making it look as though it was literally raining cats and dogs. So when you use this phrase, you're not just saying it's raining hard, you're making a casual reference to a time when animals would literally fall from the sky during storms. Your brain, thankfully, has no problem completely ignoring this horrible image, and instead just hears the phrase as a synonym for heavy rain. We've collectively agreed to forget the grim reality behind the phrase and just appreciate it as a fun, quirky way to describe the weather. Number 1. Burning the midnight oil. You're cramming for a test or finishing a project at the last minute, and you tell someone you're burning the midnight oil. This phrase is a perfect anachronism, a verbal time capsule. It means you're working late, but it's making a reference to a time when people didn't have electricity. You are literally talking about working by the light of a lamp that uses oil. The phrase is a tribute to a pre-electric world where working past sunset meant you had to manually light a lamp and slowly burn through its fuel. It's a beautiful metaphor, but it's also completely nonsensical in a modern context. You're not burning anything. You're likely just staring at a glowing screen, and your only real fear is the battery dying or your internet cutting out. The closest modern equivalent would be burning the midnight kilowatt hours, which just doesn't have the same ring to it. Your brain has to ignore the literal meaning of a lamp and oil and instead just focus on the abstract concept of working late. It's a phrase that reminds us of a world that no longer exists, a ghost of a past technological age that we still carry around in our everyday language.